David Lee Martin, good afternoon, my friend.
It's good to be here, Ray.
It's afternoon where you are. It's morning where I am.
And it's nighttime somewhere else on the planet, so we've
Isn't
got it
that?
all covered.
It's amazing. David and I, how long have we known each other? I was thinking about this earlier. I don't know the answer to that question.
Wow. I mean, it must be, good 6, 7 years now, I think, Ray, that we've been in one another's world.
And you've proven to be an amazing friend and an amazing business person and follower of Jesus in the marketplace. And that's something I want to chat about. If we can start with that, because I like to start with the lighthearted, whimsical stuff, as you know. It's interesting how many people will say to me, "I don't think your faith belongs in your business," and I, my response to that is, "How can it not be? How can it be faith and not come into my business? How can it not permeate my whole life?"
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree, Ray. I can't imagine not having Jesus at the very center of my business. I just can't imagine not working with him, not following his direction in the decisions that I'm making in every realm of life. And speaking of light-hearted and whimsical, I've actually found Jesus to be one of the most light-hearted people I've ever met. As much
Yes.
as people want to kind of weigh a discussion around faith and religion, I mean, I put that in inverted commas, with all sorts of like heavy weight.
Mhm.
The action, I've never found Jesus to be heavy at all. He is the most relaxed person I've ever met. I rarely, if ever, and in fact, I've never bumped into Jesus when he's been worrying. In fact, I don't think he's ever worried since the dawn of creation. And having him as a business partner it makes the journey a great deal less stressful, I've got to say.
I agree. And I also, I encounter this question and then I ask myself this question sometimes too. And that is, well, so if we're following Jesus in our business and we're asking for his guidance and his wisdom, how is it we still end up sometimes, some of us, not having success in business? Following Jesus does not guarantee success in business or marriage or
Yeah, I mean, that's a solid question, but I mean, I guess it comes down to what you consider success, Ray. Or I often think, see, I've had some, like everyone, I've faced some incredibly painful disappointments along the journey in life and in business. And I remember one year I invested, like I threw myself in to grow, to chase this success that I thought I deserved or I wanted, or certainly that everyone else was telling me I should want. And in a very, like, very defined, like, I wanted money, I wanted followers, I wanted all the trappings of success that would impress someone else. And did everything I could, man. I was pouring money into getting into rooms with bigger thinking people, all of that kind of stuff. Pushed hard for like a good 18 to 24 months. It just did not yield, or certainly not in the way I wanted to. And I remember being on my office at home. I had this tiny little office at home. I remember being in my office at home. I was on my knees and man, I felt just exhausted. I felt broken. And the presence of God came into that room in such a tangible way. And I just found myself saying to Jesus, thank you for not giving me what I thought I wanted.
mm, hmm
And it was this sense of which, and sometimes when Jesus speaks, he doesn't do it necessarily in words. Sometimes it's just like a knowing in a man. And this presence came and it was like a word being spoken without words being spoken. And I felt him say to me, because I had a very defined idea of how things should be. And I felt him extend my vision way beyond my days on this planet. And he said without saying words, I'm preparing you for something beyond this life. The success that I'm preparing you for, what I'm building in you is not just for what you can accomplish next year or in the next 5 years or in the next decade. I'm building you so when you stand before me, I can say to you, well done, good and faithful servant, have rulership over much. You've been faithful in little, have rulership over much. And that perspective for me kind of just changed the way I frame success. It's like God is building something in me so I can carry myself well, not just in this world, but in the world to come. And ultimately, some of those characteristics cannot be built by just getting what I want or what I think I want.
Yes, yes.
And so that was amazing to hear those, sometimes when you're praying and something comes out of your mouth of like, and it's like you're almost standing next to yourself like, wow, okay, I didn't expect that to come out. But my spirit man said, thank you for not giving me what I thought I wanted. And those words, man, have landed for me on so many occasions now, and it's made me really consider carefully, what do I really, really want? Do I want what everyone else is saying I should want? Or is there something more precious and something deeper that I can pursue?
I know the answer to that one. Yes, there is something deeper. There's a verse in the Bible where Jesus says, if you abide in me and I abide in you, ask whatever you will in my name and it'll be done. And I've, at times in my life, I took that when I was younger, like yesterday. I took it as I'm just going to pray for what I want. It's going to happen. But if you think about what it means to abide in him, and he's using the metaphor of the vine and fruit on the vine. And he's saying, I think what he's saying is, if you're in me and I'm in you, you're so attuned that you can only ask for things that I want you to ask for. And then whatever you ask for. Because he said it to the disciples, the next thing you know, they're saying, these people over here do not like you. Can we call down fire from heaven and kill them all?
I know, you asked a question, and I saw a lot of people jump in on this one because it was a really solid question about what is success. As a Christian, what is success?
Yeah.
And I thought about it, and I was reminded of the end of John's Gospel, where Peter comes, like Jesus is dealing with Peter and is saying, hey, Peter, do you love me? Hey, Peter, do you love me? Do this. Hey, Peter, do you love me? Do this. Hey, Peter, do you love me? Do this. And he then asks him, after this conversation with Jesus, he then asks him, hey, but Jesus, what about John? And Jesus said to him, look, I'll take care of John. Whatever I've got and called John to do, that's none of your business. You do what I've told you to do. And that's really what I was reminded of, is like, I think as a Christian, my idea of success is that I do what I'm called to do. And I do it with my whole heart. Because in the realm of, when we're talking about success, especially if you're in kind of the echo chamber of the online world and marketing and communication and money and all of that kind of stuff, it can be very, very loud place with a lot of comparisons and a lot of false measures. All right, I should be this, or shouldn't I be doing that? Or, oh, wow, they did this and they made this, and why aren't I making that? Or whatever else it may be. But that really struck me. Like, I loved it. Like, hey, Peter's been told what to do. And then the very first thing he says, but what about someone else?
Yeah.
What, And it's like, look, don't worry about someone else. You walk in what I've called you to. And that's really what the way I'm attempting, with some modicum of success, I've got to say. I mean, I'm not of walking in step with Jesus and what he has told me to do.
So let me ask, if I may, what does it look like practically on a day-to-day basis as you show up to the office or to work? How does your interaction with Jesus and your faith, how does that show up in your day?
I tend to walk. I mean, some words can be for a moment. They can be like the directive for this day or the directive for this hour. And some words are the directive for a season. For me, the directive for this season is that I make it my ambition to live a quiet life working with my own hands and minding my own business. So, because I was a bit troubled earlier in the year. I think ambition was scratching at my soul, and I said, Lord, I'm feeling anxious here. There are so many opportunities. I wanted to chase a lot of opportunity, and I could feel myself being anxious. I sat down and had a conversation, and that is where he led me to that scripture. Make it your ambition to live a quiet life. And I said to him, well, how do I do that? And he told me, the reason that you're not walking in that is because you're so stubborn. And again, I thought, okay, I've learned not to argue. So what do you mean by that? He said, you refuse to get your business organized in the way that it needs to be organized for you to free up bandwidth to concentrate on some other things that I would like to establish in your business. And so when it talks about make it your ambition to live a quiet life, number one, it reframed ambition for me. Okay, so the outcome, the destination I'm going to plug into my spirit here is not make 50 million by the time I'm 60 or whatever else it may be. Make 10,000 in the next 15 minutes,
Get rich with ChatGPT.
Yeah. Like, it was like, okay, so the destination that I'm heading to is a quiet life. And then I need directions. And the direction for me was mind your own business. Now that could be, hey, look, why are you worried about what John is doing? Just get on with what I've told you to do. Mind your own business in that sense, yes. So put blinkers on. It's like, it doesn't matter what Ray is doing or what George or Jane or whoever else, Geronimo, is up to. You do what I've told you to do. But actually on a very practical level, and God will interpret his word to you. When he speaks, he doesn't just kind of leave you hanging. If we'll continue the conversation, he'll say, okay, this is what I mean for you at this time, very specifically. And so the direction that I'm taking from him is to mind, to consider, to carefully look at and pay attention to my business. And he very specifically told me that one of the areas was organization. I've built a business, Ray, that I can get up in the morning and say, what do I feel like doing today?
What do you mean
Which is
by that?
Well, I can choose to do what I want.
Because
I
the
don't
money
have
is
to.
flowing in.
Yeah. It's been built in a way that works for me instead of me working for it. But the Lord wants to extend that. I believe he wants to expand that. But as a result, exactly of what you were talking about, as a result of abiding in the vine, as a result of learning and moving towards living a quiet, rooted life aligned with his purpose, where I cease from my own works, Hebrews chapter 4, strive to enter the rest where I cease from my own works and enter into those works that he has prepared for me as his workmanship. He's shaped me for something, and I need to learn and seek him and discover what it is he's called me and designed and prepared for me to walk in. And so that's how, I mean, like, that's how I approach business. I did an experiment last year, 2024. Jesus said, seek first my kingdom, and all these things will be added to you. And so I thought, okay, Jesus, I'm going to experiment here. I'm going to, instead of spending the majority of my hours working and creating and etc., I'm going to spend the majority of my hours in my office praying in tongues. And so I was praying from about June until December of 2024. I was doing 3 hours of prayer in tongues every day in my office. That was my work. That was, I would knock out a few emails and stuff in the morning to make sure that, like, the machinery, the basics of the machinery of my business was underway. And then from 10 o'clock until maybe 1, 2 o'clock, so I could prepare myself for the kids coming back from school and stuff, the door would be closed and it would just be me and the Holy Ghost. And we would see where it would lead. Every day was different. Between June and of course, this is, I think the Lord was wanting to prove a point and show me something, because this trajectory has not continued, much to my disappointment. But I would, I did prove a point to me. I was averaging about 10K a month in June, and by December, I was averaging 20 to 25K a month. It was like hockey stick. As I say, it's not continued up into the stratosphere. The goalpost, in a sense, shifted. The Holy Ghost spoke to me then in January, this word about make it your ambition to live a quiet life, mind your own business, etc. And so I think as we go along, God establishes certain things. He kind of puts the tent peg in the way he wants us to abide. And so he was establishing something in my heart during that 6 months. And now it's like he said, okay, we've got that established. You understand that principle. Let's move on now and put some other things in place.
Wow. I love hearing that. It feeds me. And let's talk. I probably did this all backwards. Tell us about your business.
I'm a writer primarily. I mean, my business got started as a result of a painful failure. Well, that's how I saw it. It wasn't, but that's how I saw it at the time.
Well, this is the hero's journey, isn't it? You're in this ordinary world, everything's going great, then something painful happens, and secularly, that's, people think of that as mythology, but it's built into the human story. Yeah. So I'm sorry I interrupted you. Your wife and you.
No, not at all, Ray. My wife and I pastored and planted churches for about 20 years. So we would start a church, build it up, and move on. And so we went a number of different towns. Anyways, I ended up in London, of all places, which is a monster of a city. For a little guy like me, it was like, wow, I just cannot wrestle this one down. We did 11 years in London, and I hobbled out of it, like beaten up. I felt so beaten. And during that time, in order to finance the work of the church, I'd built up a web design business. I actually wrote a Bible school and figured out how do you put a Bible school online and things like that. That's how I learned all of the kind of online stuff. That was my entry point. And through that, I kind of discovered Kindle publishing. I discovered affiliate marketing. I did some web design stuff for local businesses. And so I had all of these different plates that I was spinning to. And I sat down with the Holy Ghost one morning and he said to me, David, you are troubled about many things, but only one or but a few things are needed, which is the amplified version. I didn't know at the time. He said only one or but a few things are needful. And like I kind of breathed out, because I mean, I was feeling anxious. The church work had not worked out the way I'd hoped. I felt like a complete failure. I'm sat there in my room, just like, oh God, I'm a disaster. And he said, David, you're troubled about many things, but only one or but a few things are needful. And so it begs the question, okay, well, what's my one thing? And he said to me, writing. And so from that day forward, I jettisoned the other things. Even though they were an income stream, I handed away the web design business. I kind of peeled back on affiliate stuff that I was doing, because everything takes energy. Everything takes its focus and attention. We have a limited amount of energy, and we want it to be put in the direction that Jesus is heading, not run off in all sorts of other ways.
Right.
And he said writing. So I focused entirely in, like over a period, I focused entirely in, okay, God, I'm a writer. I'm going to build a writing, publishing business. And I began to explore, I write nonfiction. Okay, so I was already doing that. I was working with children's books. In fact, I'm revisiting my children's books presently, which is really fun. I'm enjoying it a lot. And began to explore fiction, and particularly Christian fiction. And so that was the inception of a shift. When we shift ourselves to align with what God is saying, other things, all things then work together for good to those who are called according to his purpose. It's not like all things work together for good, full stop. It's connected to his purpose. It's like,
right.
Bad stuff is not always good, it's like, but when it's connected to his purpose, and when we connect ourselves and align ourselves, which is kind of what I'm trying to do now with my present word, is I want to align myself with that word. And as I align myself with that word, all things then begin to work together for good, to bring into my kind of orbit the necessary resources to walk out that word. And so I started building a book business. That was like 7-8 years ago, something like that. And like from a standing start, I say a standing start, I kind of tried to publish a couple of Kindle books and made like I could count the number of dollars on my fingers, how much money I'd made prior to that. And from that point on, I've made about $2 million in book royalties from short books that are 99 cents each. So I get like 20, 30 cents per sale. So that's a lot of books. Yeah.
And what's nice is they reflect a Christian worldview and values. You don't have to worry you're going to read something bad in one of these books. And my wife is my ultimate test of what's a book that really works, because she has no filter if she doesn't like a book. She has read, I think she's read 7 or 8 of your books by now, and she said to me, Ray, these are really good. She really enjoys them. Nice short reads, satisfying stories. So I think that's an important part of the puzzle, especially now in the age of AI. Can you talk a little bit about AI? How does that factor into the business these days?
With AI, Ray, I mean, initially when AI started first to kind of roll out, I did feel a little anxious and a little nervous about the changing of the guard, if you like, that like, oh, wow, this has arrived. I would rather close my eyes, because I had quite a nice little system in place and all was well. And in fact, I still work with a lot of ghostwriters, and enjoy doing so. I enjoy the fact that I can work with creative people to produce, as you say, a quality product that serves a purpose and serves a particular market and a particular reader. But I was very, very reluctant to lean in to AI. I just wanted to close my eyes and pretend that it wasn't. My attitude has changed somewhat since that time, because I figured, we as creatives and, Christian creatives, yeah, but creatives of any kind, We want to be on the front wave of something, not the tail end. And I think that the way I'm looking at AI now is very much as a co-pilot, very much as a something that I can leverage to produce a better product. And so rather than it being like press a button and it spits out a book, and we just, because it's not there yet. It's a long way from that yet. I found that it's actually a bit like if you've got a lump of clay, you've actually got to put your hand to the clay to mold it into something beautiful. And so when I'm working with AI, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to work with that clay and produce books. Like my son is much more skilled at this than I. But it's a powerful ally.
Yes, I mean, I think we're in agreement on this. We've talked about it quite a bit before this conversation. I want to go back. I sort of sidetracked you, and as I often want to do. But you were saying how you've made this very nice income stream, selling 99-cent books and lots of them. And where does the story go from there when you had that insight and that began working? So what next?
All right. Well, like back then, as I was starting the business, you mean? Yeah. The first thing I recognized is that every business is a servant business. Every business is intended to, the Bible talks about whatever gifts you've been given, use them to serve one another. And I think that a lot of people may approach business as something that can serve them. All right, I can put a lot of rubbish stuff out there and make a bunch of money from ignorant people who are desperate for a quick win. I can make them think that what I offer them is going to give them that, and then they'll give me money and I can run off into the sunset, in my Lamborghini. But and I'm not saying that's everyone, but I've seen a few like that online. But right at the outset, I thought, man, I want to come in here and recognize that this is a servant business and that my job is to serve readers well. If I'm going to be a writer, my job is to serve readers, not to just, I could get all kind of misty-eyed about like the artistic life and the troubled artist. I don't want to be a troubled artist, Ray. I want to be a joyful creator.
Yeah.
I want to be someone who develops things that serve other people well. And as I do that, then the natural response will be that I will be provided for. I'm always think of like when I think of wealth creation, my first job is to create wealth that I can put in the hands of other people. In my case, as a writer, the wealth that I put into the hands of other people are words that either will entertain them or educate them. And so I seek to do that. And so right from the outset, I looked at what is it people want to read. And that became the starting point. So my starting point wasn't what do I want to write? The starting point was what do people want to read? How can I help and how can I lean in to where people are already congregating and already finding value?
That's such an important point because there are a lot of people online on YouTube, and I've seen so many interviews where the writer who has succeeded wildly says, don't write to the market, write what's in your heart. And I think, well, there's two things going on there. One is there's survivorship bias. I became successful, so now I think I know everything about how to be successful. And at least part of that is luck, happenstance. And then the other part of it is, I think it's madness to say don't write to the market. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the market are the readers. And to me, a book doesn't really fulfill its purpose. A book, yeah. The purpose of a book is not to be written. the purpose of a book is to be read. And so
That's a
again,
tweetable tweet right there.
yeah. The reader is absolutely in the frame for me. And what I found, Ray, and as you alluded to, I found that my desires, the things that I want to put out into the world, the message that I want to embody and exemplify and amplify can be packaged in many, many different ways. And those packages can, you can wrap that gift in a way that is very, very attractive to people out there in the marketplace. And I'm not talking about like wrap it in, like putting dog doo-doo in a nice golden bag. I'm talking about actually, I have something that is in my heart. I have something, a worldview that I want to bring to the marketplace, but I want to find a vehicle that will allow me to do that effectively. And so looking at what the market is already reading is simply the vehicle that you utilize to carry your message to their lives and to their heart. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
It makes total sense. And I think it's, I think particularly fiction authors and Christian fiction authors, people who have a different worldview than so many things we see pushed so hard online, they may tend to think, well, I don't know if I should do this or not. I think it's important that we're in the marketplace producing, it doesn't have to be a quote Christian book. It can be a good story that subtly, not in a preachy way, very subtly conveys the Christian worldview. Because what's happened, I believe, is we look around and we see all kinds of reprehensible garbage in the entertainment marketplace, the films, the TV shows, the songs, the books. And I often would say in the past, why does this get so much attention? And a friend of mine said, well, it's because they speak up and they do have an agenda, and it's to normalize their worldview. They want everybody to think this is normal life. And so shouldn't we be telling the real story, the truth? And again, I don't mean preachy. I just mean there's ways to tell great stories. I think, for so long, Christian creatives have been looked down on. If you said Christian music, people would go, oh, including me. It's like, that means not very good music. We got to get past that. We should be at the forefront, leading in the number one best-selling novels, the number one best-selling song on Spotify, and so forth. That's my belief anyway. So I get off the soapbox now and stop preaching.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, Ray. I mean, I write a daily newsletter specifically for Christian authors, creators, and early stage entrepreneurs, really. People who are wanting to take their creativity and kind of stand up, step out, and put their worth out to the world because of exactly what you're saying. I believe that with all my heart. I believe that the creator, capital C, lives in me as a creator, small c, and that we are in a partnership.
Yes.
I mean, like Jesus is quite literally my business partner, and we enjoy one another's company a lot. I mean,
if you're going to be partners, you should like one another.
Yeah. We're having a good time, and we're doing a lot of fun things. We're experimenting with some stuff, and I make the mistakes, and he kind of corrects them. But like seriously, I mean, if anyone on this planet should be bringing something out of this world, it should be those of us who do live out of this world. We're seated together with him in heavenly places. The scriptures tell us that we have the mind of Christ. Now, it's like we have an unfair advantage in the marketplace, an unfair advantage in every industry, because we're connected to something outside of the limits of human capacity and human knowledge. I totally totally on board. Like, bring it.
Okay, so we get you got your fiction publishing, and we'll put the links to all the different sites and books and things that people can explore and learn more about what you're doing. And not just learn, I think you'll enjoy reading the books, but you've got nonfiction books as well, and you help creatives be creative. Can you talk a little bit about those other parts of the business?
Yeah, so the other side, I mean, like I say, my background is as a church pastor. Yeah, so and I think probably by calling, there's an element of being a teacher of some kind, and that naturally spilled over. As I began to see success in some of the things that I was putting my hand to, I would naturally crystallize that learning into something that I could then share with other people. Because I believe in a big, fat, massive pie. That like Ray can have a massive slice and I can have a massive slice, and anyone you getting more does not mean I get less.
No, we'll just bake more pie.
It is like we just make more pie. Yeah, that's exactly. God is a God of abundance. I believe in peaceful, purposeful prosperity. And I believe that prosperity flows from the soul. And as we align ourselves with the purposes of God, the fruit of that will be an abundance in every area of life. And so as a result of seeing some success in certain things, I began to bake my experience into products and into coaching and things like that. So I run the other side of my business. I have, the daily newsletter, Faithful Creatives, and then I run something called the Christian Creative Academy. And the Christian Creative Academy is essentially a Christ-centered course, if you like, or a Christ-centered experience that helps people explore their creativity centered on their identity as a Christian creator. So discovering that gold on the inside and then equipping them to then share that in tangible ways, whether that's through a book, through a podcast, all manner of different ways in which we can crystallize that treasure on the inside into something that someone else, and again, the focus is on, as a Christian creator, your job is to take what's on the inside and transfer it so someone else can benefit from it. And so, yeah, that's the other side of my business, is really that equipping, I would call it equipping the saints for the work of the ministry. And by ministry, I don't mean singing songs on Sunday morning.
Right.
Ministry might be writing and publishing children's books. Ministry might be developing a cookery school. My daughter's a dancer. She's developing Make It Happen Mindset Academy presently, where she teaches and trains and develops dancers, ballet dancers, again in the marketplace. So yeah, there's the scriptures talk about the many faceted wisdom of God, many facets. So and I think when people come to these things, they look and it's like this one facet called religion.
Yeah.
All right, but if my creativity can't be worked out in the context of a stage and 200 seats all lined up watching whatever's happening on the stage, then I'm like a pointless waste of space on the planet. Whereas actually there are many facets, and what we need to do as creatives is turn that diamond round and begin to consider wow, how does Jesus want to show up in the movie arena? How does Jesus want to show up in the music arena? How does Jesus want to show up in fantasy, epic fantasy? How does Jesus want to show up in thrillers or romance or wherever else it may be? You choose your creative realm. I can tell you, Jesus is a king of a kingdom, not just the king of the church. The church is part of the kingdom.
Yeah.
But the kingdom is so much greater than that. I love the way the Bible tells us all things were made by him and for his pleasure, they were created. And we get the opportunity to partake. As creatives, we get the opportunity to partake of his pleasure and to share in his pleasure as we make things, as we create things.
Perfect opportunity to segue into talking about where can people find you and your work online if they want to engage more in that.
If people want to find me, they can go to sign up for my daily newsletter, which is really where my heart is most clearly expressed. Go to faithfulcreatives.com. If they want to read some of my work, I've got my books on there. I write largely on prayer. That's my area of that I love to write. And my blogs and things like that, go to davidleemartin.com. And then for the fiction side of things, for the book business, it's Pure Read, Pure.
I recommend you do all those things. We'll put the links below this video, or they'll be attached in the show notes to the podcast. So I'm going to borrow a favorite question that I hear Tim Ferriss ask his guests quite often. If you could get that big animated billboard in Times Square, you could say anything you wanted to say to the world, what would you put on that billboard?
I would put, and this is the way I want to live my life. Jesus first, everything else follows. If we get first things first, everything else will follow. And it's keeping that first thing first that's the key to success, whatever success looks like. So yeah, I would very much like to have that billboard.
David Lee Martin, my good friend, my brother, thank you.
It's a pleasure, Ray. It's always a pleasure.